Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We're just going to give everybody a minute or so to get into the room this morning. Hopefully you can see four of us on screen. So do feel free to use the chat box. Say hello, tell us where you are. And we'll give people 30 seconds or so. While we do that, I will just get my slides ready to go. So I always get nervous when I ask people to put stuff in chat and nothing comes in, because it's like, can you hear us? We are here. Still nothing. Oh, somebody tell me. Here we go. Somebody said something. So excellent. We're good to go. So good morning. Welcome to our App of the Month webinar for May. I'm delighted to be joined by one of my App Advisory Plus colleagues, who many of you will know, Rowan, who also is now working extremely hard in Karbon. So good morning, Rowan. And we're also joined by Tom and Johan, who are going to bring some real life perspective to the session for us this morning. So we should be done by about 11:15 today. I always have to check my times when I do that. If you have any questions during the course of the session, we'd love this to be interactive. So do pop those into the Q&A box. Use the chat box for any other observations, supporting the points we make, or whatever you feel you need to do. But keep questions to Q&A, and we will do our best to get to those for you before we wrap up the session. We are recording, so the recording will be circulated to everybody that's attended and those that have registered and are not able to make it for the live version. So we'll share that at the end of the session. And all of our App of the Month webinars are gradually being added to our uplifted website. So do check in there to see some of the previous sessions. So without any further ado, let's get cracking. So those that don't know me, my name is Will Farnell. I'm founder of Farnell Clark and co-founder and one of the directors at App Advisory Plus. And as I say, I'm delighted to be joined today by firstly Rowan. So Rowan, do you want to just give a quick introduction as to who you are?
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning, everyone. My name's Rowan. I'm a senior services manager at Karbon. So I help our clients with in the onboarding phase, effectively, to get them set up and using the product in full. I'm also a director of App Advisory Plus, as Will mentioned there. So we've got a little bit of history.
Just a little bit. Thanks for that, Rowan. And we're delighted today to be joined by two other fellow accountants in practice, who are going to share some of their own experiences around the topic we're talking about today. So Johan, I'll come to you first. Do you want to give a quick intro?
Yeah, my name's Johan. I am the Group Managing Director for the Onpoint Accounting Group. We've got a team of 10 people dotted across the UK supporting small and startup businesses in their first stages of business, really.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Johan. And Tom?
Yeah, so I'm the Cloud Accounting Advisor at BKL, North London firm of about 20 partners and 200 plus staff.
Excellent. So what we've got today is we're going to try and cover off the smaller firm end, the larger firm end. I've, as always, got my own perspectives on all this, and I sit somewhere in the middle of the other two guys. So hopefully what we've got today is a really reflective set of input from firms of different sizes that have made decisions around practice management that we're going to share with you during the session. So what are we going to talk about? This is normally a much longer agenda, but we're really going to cover three topics today. So first of all, why should we adopt practice management? What's the point of adopting practice management? Why can't we just carry on with spreadsheets because they've worked for years? So we'll cover off some of those points. Then we're going to go on to how do you choose the right tool? What are the things you need to think about in terms of making selection of the right technology? And then finally, the most important bit, once you've made that decision, how do you implement it? How do you bring the team along with you? How do you manage the process? Clearly, new technology normally needs a new business model underneath it. It needs a new way of thinking. So how do we manage those change management processes? And we're going to call on the three guys on the screen here to share their experience experiences there. So whilst this is a generic topic, and we're going to talk about a whole bunch of different practice management perspectives, we do have a slight Karbon bias on the call today. Karbon were our app of the month for May, and we're delighted to do a number of sessions with them at Accountex as well that were really well received. This is kind of an extension to one of the sessions that we ran at Accountex. But Rowan, just for anyone who doesn't know, do you want to give a quick introduction to Karbon and who they are and what they do?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're a practice management solution for the connected firm. We help to bring work, clients, planning and communication all together to give you visibility on what's going on in your practice, what your deadlines are, where are your bottlenecks, which jobs, clients, staff are profitable, who has capacity, so that you can use all of that information to effectively make better decisions. We've also got integrations with email providers, calendar integration coming in very shortly, as well as with document management systems, currently Dropbox, but soon to be expanded, proposal systems, Zapier, and as well as that, we've got an extensive public API, which is continually being developed. Just a little bit of background on where we're at in terms of the team. Worldwide, we're up to around 160 staff, and that includes a dedicated team of 15 in the UK, across sales, services, support, and customer success. So we're really set up to service customers in the UK from the UK.
Perfect. Thank you, Rowan. So let's get cracking on the conversation, guys. So practice management, we've seen massive kind of development, massive growth in the market of practice management. And I think we look at what lots of firms have traditionally done, and either they've kind of survived on managing jobs and workflow through spreadsheets. Some firms, if they've gone down the integrated suite route with tools like Iris and CCH and Digita, they might have had some practice management or certainly workflow management within that process. Yet we've seen Karbon being an example, as there's plenty others on the market in terms of adoption and development of cloud-based practice management. And my own view on all of this has been that the stuff that has a direct impact on clients, the way that we integrate, the way we work with clients, needs to be on the cloud. It needs to give greater capacity for us to think differently. Certainly Rowan and I have had conversations before about are we doing a disservice to these kind of tools by calling them practice management? My personal view is we are, because I think it's much more about how do we manage the client relationship. So they're more client delivery systems, client service systems, rather than practice management. We have a big problem in accounting in that we get too focused on the task and not the client, and almost practice management systems managing workflow and everything else kind of encourages that focus on the task, which is perhaps the wrong thing. But whether practice management is the right title is a conversation for another day, and not for today. So why should we adopt practice management tools? And I know, Tom, I'm going to come to you first on this one, because you're a big mid-tier firm, and I'm led to believe that prior to implementing a practice management system, you were using spreadsheets. Is that right?
Yes, correct. Yeah, we were. Spreadsheets are so easy to stick with, aren't they? I think that's the thing. But yes, we were all managers in our department, especially, had their own spreadsheet for their own jobs with their own deadlines. They all look completely different. They were very difficult to get hold of, and conversations around actually where is all our work, how much work have we got, were just taking way too long in the practice. So yeah, we kind of, how we came to about looking for practice management software was we were doing a whole efficiency thing across our entire department, and that really stood out as one of the big things that we could get a big quick win on if we took some time to properly implement something.
Yeah. And what were what were the big drivers for deciding that moving from spreadsheet to a purpose-built practice management solution was going to be the right thing to do?
The big drivers, I guess, were time savings in meetings, really having a aerial view, like a bird's eye view across the entire practice rather across your specific things that you were dealing with. That was really important, especially for our partners. Not having to have the same, our partners don't work with just one manager, they work with 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 managers. And they were having to have eight meetings instead of actually being able to log into something like Karbon and be able to see that at an overview.
Yeah, so I think, and I'll come to Johan in a minute on this. I think that the big things when I think about it is visibility is critical in terms of how do we get visibility of what we're doing. And briefly, my story around practice management is we were using kind of integrated suite. So we're an Iris practice. We used Iris practice management. Getting data out was a real problem. And actually, the big thing for me that I had a challenge with when we got my team was about, I don't know, 25 people. And I had no visibility, and email was a big one in terms of I had 25 mailboxes, each member of staff. I had no visibility of what was going out, what was coming in. And equally, I'd be getting, I don't know, 200 emails a day, and I'd get an email, I'd forward it to a member of a team, and then I'd delete it from my inbox. And then 2 weeks later, the client would email me back and say, hey, well, I never got a reply. And I think, oh, I want to forward it to somebody. So it's almost that, how do I convert an email into a task was kind of the start. And it was a bit before the existing PM solutions had kind of solved this problem. So we went out and built our own. So we built our own practice management solution because there wasn't anything on the market that did what we wanted. Firms now have got much more choice, and things that we thought were missing are now there in most of the tools. But that was a big challenge for us. It was about that visibility of data. So I think the visibility is the key thing, the efficiency that you already mentioned in terms of how do we eliminate duplication? How do we just kind of automate some of the things that we that we do? And I mean, the big challenge with spreadsheets is like, well, it's like one version, and who controls the master? And if it's a bit easier now with SharePoint and stuff, but you'd have been using spreadsheets before SharePoint. So that'd be like, if somebody else got the Excel open, you can only get read-only access. And it's just like, how can you possibly work like that in a firm of that size? And you will know that clearly that's not unique in a firm of 200 people to be using spreadsheets.
No,
but Johan, what's your take on this? Why should firms make good practice management solutions a priority?
So I started what is now the Onpoint Accounting Group 5 years ago. And at that time, I already felt spreadsheets were old-fashioned, which I know I'm probably going to get things thrown at me and booed out of the room at a rapid pace for saying that, but spreadsheets and everything were always old-fashioned in my mind. So from day one, we were looking at cloud-based accounting products. We were looking at document capturing software like your decks and auto entry and stuff. So it made complete sense that our practice management tool was cloud-based. When it was just me, there's only so much information I can retain in my head before you start forgetting and missing deadlines. And it only takes a few painful conversations like that with clients before you go, right, I need a solution. Whether that is a diary, a calendar, a spreadsheet, or a practice management solution. I knew I wanted to grow the business. I knew it wasn't going to be just me from day one. So I wanted something that was going to be transferable throughout the life of the business. I wanted something that helped with automated emails because I wanted to cut down admin time. And no matter how expensive your software is, it's still cheaper than employing enough admins to send all those emails manually. So there's cost savings, time savings, etc. to be had there, which meant it was the right choice for us.
And I mean, I think we're going to cover this in a bit more detail later, but I think the thing we've got to remember is that technology is only ever as good as the people that are using it. So whilst it's great to say we've got this marvelous all singing, all dancing practice management solution, if the team are not using it in the right way, it can still be really inefficient. And one of the sessions we did with Karbon at Accountex, we put up I think it's a Bill Gates quote that basically said that if you have really poor processes and put technology over the top, then you just make them even worse. So we've got to make sure that we've got the right process, we've got the right people before we overlay the technology to make sure that we achieve the outcomes that we want. So I mean, I just wanted to touch on that in terms of, I'm hoping that the audience we get here, most of the people on this call are already going to have recognized the value that good practice management software, client delivery software, whatever we want to call it, has in terms of delivering better client experiences, because fundamentally we've got to stay focused on the fact that what we're trying to do here is make sure we have really good client experience, and these tools should be supporting that to happen. It should be supporting us in what we deliver to our clients. So we've made the decision. We're going to go and implement some practice management systems. I'm going to come to you first on this, Rowan, and perhaps with your app advisory hat on more than your Karbon hat on here. What are the things that firms should do when they're looking at choosing, in this case, a practice management tool? But I'm sure that the way that we as App Advisory Plus would be advising people to make technology choices, what you're going to say here should be relevant, whether it's practice management or any other category of technology. How do we go about choosing the right tool?
Yeah, so the first thing that you really need to do is just understand the requirements that you have. So just getting a list together of all of the requirements that you have, talking to the people that actually need to be using the software and understanding what their requirements might be, splitting that out then into, these are the must-haves, these are the nice-to-haves. That's a really basic starting point that everyone can do, and that provides you then with a framework for them to go and do some research, and that makes the demos that you then go on a bit more directed, and it helps the actual person that's doing the demo to give you the information that you definitely need to see to help you make a decision on which is right for you.
Yeah, and again, that's relevant for any category of technology that you're implementing, isn't it? It's the principles are the same, and clearly what we've done with App Advisory Plus is try and help reduce that research time. So once you know what your must-haves and nice-to-haves are, you can start to get some insights into the tools that are going to help with that. So in terms of specifics, Johan and Tom, if we think about the process that you went in terms of choosing technology, I mean, Tom, you went from spreadsheets to Karbon. What process did you go through internally as a firm?
Testing and trial and error, really. So first time round, we actually didn't look at Karbon first. We looked at another software that was more of a project management system rather than actually a practice management system for accountants. So we spent a lot of time actually trying to, and this is probably a really important point, it was trying to fit that square peg into the round hole. And we were making so many sacrifices on how we had to set up the system. It just became untenable in the end. So that's really important, actually, is just to make sure that, like Rowan said, you really know what you're looking for before you just jump into a software. So after we had done that, we really did know what we needed. So we did have a full requirements list of exactly what we needed to be able to tick off. And that's kind of how we fell across Karbon.
Yeah, and I want to pick up on that point about kind of the generic, like I'm assuming you're talking about something like Asana or one of those tools where they're task management systems. They have broad appeal, and I know lots of firms that use Asana. So I mean, it'd be interesting to get kind of all your views on kind of why should firms, or why do we think there's an opportunity for purpose-built accounting tools? I mean, I know, again, we can take the example of something like Workflow Max, which obviously many years ago we tried in our firm when we moved to onto Xero, and it was quite clear that it wasn't built for accountants. because things like deadline dates, and we've got so many kind of dates that we have to focus on, don't we? Because we've got period end date, we've got statutory filing date, but then we might want an internal due date on a job, and some systems just can't give us that flexibility. So clearly somebody that's building a product for accountants will know that we need kind of at least 3 date points in there, and we might need milestones and everything else. So I mean, did you kind of roll out that, and did you uncover challenges with or limitations within that, which is why you then looked again at a profession specific tool?
So we didn't roll it out. The concept we kind of went was let's test it. Let's create a proof of concept that we can share and then run through a pilot team. We never got to the pilot team with Asana, just because the proof of concept, we could never get to the state that we wanted to get to. But that's kind of the process we went through. And going back to the stuff which is accountant based, the biggest hurdle we found was having things repeating at different frequencies. Accountancy work repeats at different frequencies. You can do stuff daily, you can do stuff bi-weekly, you can do stuff monthly, yearly. And trying to manage that in a system that's not built for that is really, really difficult.
Yeah. Okay. And Johan, I mean, you I think you've used a couple of different tools and things now. I mean, what's your process? How did you go about making tool selection?
I mean, I've been around the houses in the last 5 years. I've been to Accountancy Manager, Asana, HubSpot, KPM, Numisma, back to Accountancy Manager.
In 5 years?
Yeah. My team
I'm really
gets
interested to hear the story here, then go for it. So
the first lesson what I've learned is, if you're a fast growing firm in the early stages, accept that what's going to work for you today will not work for you potentially in 2 years' time.
Yeah.
So, and what will work for you in maybe 2 years' time perhaps isn't affordable or required today.
Yeah.
So you either pay more now. So for example, Karbon is always at the top of my wish list type thing, but it's like, it's a bit overkill for what I need. It's more expensive than other products at times. I'll go with something else. And we got to the point where we've outgrown that and we needed more powerful insights, and Karbon was the right answer. Yeah. And now is the right time for us.
Yeah.
So making a choice today, you don't have to stick with it forever and then just compromise for the rest of your firm's career, as it were. So yeah, also plenty of testing. These guys that are selling you these softwares are extremely good at selling the dream and not what's actually functioning today. Yeah. So I won't name them because I have been threatened with lawsuits in the past for slander, for having an opinion. But there are products out there that I was sold, this is how this is going to work. And then when you get in there, it's like, well, that's not how it works now. Oh, no, that's what it's going to do soon. Right? How soon is soon? Well, if we're realistic, probably 3 or 4 years. And it's like, right, that's no good to me now. I need that solution now. So yeah, by all means, listen to the sales pitch, but get that free trial and get in there and test it and trial it and invest time in it, because it's going to save you so much time in the future.
Yeah. And then, I mean, the couple of points to pick up there, you mentioned HubSpot, and I think it's really important, certainly for me, to make a distinction here, because what I see so many firms doing is they talk about wanting a CRM, and it isn't the CRM they want, it's a practice management solution they want. So we have to make a real distinction here in terms of most practice management solutions are not really CRMs. CRM is about sales funnel and marketing and all of that kind of stuff. So recognize that there is a distinction. Yes, your practice management solutions will largely give you a kind of robust database, and it will give you the ability to send emails and all run those kind of campaigns, but it's not. HubSpot is a very different solution to an accounting practice management solution. So be really careful with your terminology on that. And Rowan, just on that point, I mean, is that a conversation you get into with customers around kind of CRM versus practice management?
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes people like you say, sort of are confused about what the distinction might be. So that does happen, yeah.
Yeah. So just be really conscious of that when you use that language. So kind of made the selection around tools, a few tips there in terms of kind of do the demos, make sure you identify what the nice to haves, the must haves are, go out, research the market, don't be afraid to ask difficult questions, test them, try and get data in. I mean, so many problems you have with kind of running trials on software, and particularly something like practice management that's going to be so critical to the way that you run your firm. Trying to do a trial when you've got no data in there just doesn't really work. You've got to make sure you've got some data in there, and really good data to really test how things are going to work in practice for you. So we get to the point we're going to implement. So made our decision. All we've got to do now, get it up and running. Where do we start? So what's most important? I mean, Tom, let's come back to you. What was your implementation plan? What did it look like? And certainly, how did the reality live up to the expectation in terms of what you thought was going to be involved and what ultimately was involved?
Yeah, so first thing I would say is make sure you agree your onboarding support that you're going to get. Make sure that you know how much support you're going to get from a Karbon or from an Asana or from whatever product you choose. Because that's really important. You need to know how much support and access you're going to have to that, because especially with a lot of data and stuff that we have to get into the system. I mean, we had to put nearly 4,000 organizations onto the system. With that level of, if you're not getting the right support, it's going to drag the whole system. It's going to take the whole implementation phase a lot longer than it should do. So that's probably the first thing. And then you really need to dedicate some resource. Don't be afraid for someone to go unbillable for a period of time. In our practice, I was the person that did that. And I went almost from 90-something% billable to 15% billable for a good 3-4 months to be able to get that implemented. And it's really important that you spend the time to make sure that you're getting it right, and the data that you get into the system is the correct data, rather than just the old rubbish data that you've got from your old CRS system, which has just been cluttered with junk.
And did you have to do did you do some data cleansing before you cross the data over? Because I mean, that's always a challenge, isn't it? Do you clean the data before you move it? Do you move it and then clean it? So you're starting with clean data. And Rowan, I mean, any of these questions, if you've got an expert's view on the right best practice here, let us know. But I'm equally interested to know what these guys did in practice.
So we attempted as best as we could was to clean the data before we put it into the new system.
Yeah. Okay.
It's definitely something that slows up the implementation if that hasn't been done, because and often it's an inevitability of you're changing a system. That is a good time generally to actually get your data cleansed, because then moving into the new system, everything's as it needs to be, so that you do get less issues there. So making sure that's done is important.
Yeah, and Johan, with your 10 different systems in 5 years, you're going to be an expert in data migration now, aren't you? So, what can you share on this?
Yeah, like as Tom says, it's making sure you've got the resources ready. Except this is going to take time. Personally, I think the quicker you do it, the better, because the data gets stale. The moment you've exported it from your old system, and there's people still using an old system, that data you've exported is becoming outdated. So you need to get the whole team over to your new system as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
So when I moved from KPM to accountancy manager, there was 7 team members at the time, and it took 3 of us 7 days to get everything sorted into it, do it all manually. And that was me and one other person working evenings as well and the weekends. And it was fine. We were up and running within a week. Moving to Karbon was a lot easier because they've got an implementation process. They've got the support there that you can invest in, and it saved us a fortune in time for the rest of the team. So we went from nothing to everything in Karbon, we're using about 9 hours of my time over a space of a week.
Yeah.
And the team were trained on the Friday. So I started on the Monday with the implementation. The team were being trained on the Friday afternoon, ready for start of Monday morning. This is the new software. So it meant none of our data was too stale.
Okay.
And we just accepted we're going to draw a line. So accountancy manager at the time, it tracked all the emails and stuff. You had the timeline. We've now accepted we're going to have one license with accountancy manager. So if we need to go back to the historic information, it's there.
Yeah.
But we cleansed our data to the core, like client name, address, tax details, etc. We cleansed it right down to the core information to put it into Karbon.
Yeah.
And then if we need to go back pre 1st of April or something, I think it is, we know that granular details in accountancy manager. We've got one license a month, so we can just log in. Anything from the 1st of April 2022 onwards will be in a granular state within Karbon for us.
Yeah. Okay. And I mean, Tom, did you parallel run? Did you kind of switch everything over, stop using spreadsheets, started using Karbon the next day? Or did you kind of continue to kind of have that safety net and run both?
So within our department, we run a pod structure anyway within our department. So we have one department of 60 people and say 8 pods of 8 people. So like Johan said, instead of getting the data stale, we just move data for one pod at a time rather than having to do the whole works. And then naturally, we ran it parallel with our spreadsheets for a couple of months just to make sure that all the data came across. We weren't missing any jobs.
Yeah.
And everyone was comfortable using both systems.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, we said at the beginning that with this kind of change management piece, getting the team on board is critical here. And I talk to accounting firms all the time when they're thinking about technology, they're thinking about new process, and they find they get resistance to it. And for me, the big challenge is that so often the change is focused on the software or the process rather than the client outcome. And I think for me, that's always the key thing with any kind of change in accounting firms, particularly because accountants really genuinely care about their clients, and everyone that works in an accounting firm cares about the client. So if we can position change as this is in the interest of the client, it's going to benefit the client because then we've got that kind of immediate buy-in. But I mean, I'd love to know how you did it particularly for you, Tom. I think you said you've got about 60 of your team have now made that transition. That's a big chunk of people. So how did you go about kind of getting that buy-in, keeping them engaged in the program and so on? Yeah,
so thankfully it was led by the directors, it was led by the partners. They were the ones that were really rooting for this. So it was led from the top down. Yeah. But we're a training firm as well. So actually from the bottom up, everyone is used to taking on lots of new technologies. They're used to seeing new social media systems. They're used to being around technology. So that wasn't too much of an issue. Obviously you have staff that have been with the firm for some period of time, and that was the biggest issue we came across probably. But it's just educating them. This without this, we're really going to struggle to manage the volume of work that we have. So education really, a lot of support, lots of training videos, which we've all spoken about, but having a library of training videos where you can refer people back to this is how you set up a job, this is how you edit this is how you do that, rather than the one resource that you have. So me or Johan, rather than having to spend time with everyone individually, you have that resource where you can send them the link.
And with those videos, yes, every software provider will have their own videos, so everyone's got their own help hub, but the benefit in you doing your own on a Loom, so it's free software, it's really easy to use, is that you can put it into your own terminology and you can show this is how we set up a work task for our business. It's not generic. And that makes life so much easier for the team because they understand it in our terms. Whereas there's some great videos on the Karbon website, but they're generic. This is how you set up a work task. Well, we might have some idiosyncrasies there that we want to put in. So having your own Loom videos is really powerful.
Yeah, excellent.
And scalable, right? Because you're not having to do it over and over again as you bring in new employees.
Yeah, we've had 2 new people start since we've put Karbon in place. I've not had to spend any time training them because they've just got this huge archive of Loom videos that I've already done for the rest of the team.
Yeah. So I think the key point here is the one that Tom made in terms of this has got to come from the top. It's got to be pushed down. Largely the senior leadership have got to be championing this. We're going to touch on the role of kind of implementation champions and things in a moment. Johan, I know you responded to a question, but it went to panelists here. So somebody said to Johan, what was the reason for moving from accounting manager to Karbon? Is it more functionality, or did you outgrow accounting manager? Johan's response to that was that the leadership team required more insights and overview to lead the business better, and Karbon provided this insight. So it was, I mean, Johan, do you want to just expand on that question?
Yeah, accountancy manager is great, and I love it. And there was a running joke in the team of, we highlighted Karbon as a solution to our ongoing challenges within our own business, and the team were very happy to take the Michael out of me. So when you're going to send a breakup email to accountancy manager, like, they knew I loved the product, but yeah, they're a fantastic solution and they're great for a lot of businesses. We needed more insight from a leadership team point of view. So I wanted to be able to log in and see how many overdue tasks there were, how many tasks each staff member had allocated to them, so I can make sure we've got got space for more clients to come on board. I didn't really know if we were at capacity or not, and which team members were over capacity and which ones weren't. We wanted to see the clients saying that we don't email them back quick enough. Is that true? Well, Karbon tells us. Like, there's lots of insight like that, which we couldn't get from accountancy manager, but we could from Karbon, and that was the reason for our move. The day-to-day management of the business and completing work, that was fine in accountancy manager. We just needed that higher level for the leadership team.
Yeah, and I think this is kind of a hats off to all of the vendors in this space. I mean, practice management is a really tough ask because every firm has different ideas about how it wants to do things. So I think the choice that we have in the market is really, really positive, and the fact that we can make distinctions between the products in terms of the way that they do different things gives us that choice, because it's really difficult because everyone wants to run their firm in their own way, and you've got to find a product here that will support and underpin whatever approach people want to take. So Rowan, I'm conscious of time. Are there particular things here in this, because this is obviously your bag in terms of this implementing change management, and any big topics that you think either of these two guys can respond and give us some real insights into?
I think the role of having a champion is really key, and we've touched on that a little bit, but just what does that actually mean? Well, that is someone that has dedicated time out of their normal day-to-day job to actually look at what needs to be done to get it set up in the way that your firm needs. We obviously have standard kind of templates and things that can be adopted, and we import contacts to support with that for free, but there inevitably is going to be nuances in the way that you run your practice, which you need to set up the system to achieve. So having someone dedicated out for a little bit of time is actually an investment, and you two guys did that really well, and that's why your implementations were successful.
And was it you two as individuals that were those champions? You were the ones that were driving it. I'm sure it was you, Tom, and your firm. But Johan, was that you as well? Were you leading from the front on that?
Yeah. So there's a big topic here about managing change. So I'm more qualified as a manager. I'm a chartered manager. Management and leadership is my bag. I love it. That's what I listen to as audiobooks, and it's what I do a lot of CPD and stuff in. And change management is a real fan topic of mine. And accountants and bookkeepers aren't good at change. We see the resistance when MTD comes in and stuff like that. If we can't handle that change, how can we handle change of softwares? So it's been identified that within my firm that I am the most adaptable to change. I understand the change management process. So for that reason, when there was change to be had in the business, I always lead that because that's my skill set versus the rest of my team.
Yeah. And Tom, from your point of view, how did you fulfill your role, and what was the benefit of you having that kind of autonomy to drive the project?
I mean, we've not implemented another practice management system, so it's not experience from there, but it's experience from working with loads of vendors. We're a Zero firm, being part of the Zero ecosystem and dealing with all of that kind of stuff. That helps. And I guess the next point is it doesn't have to be a partner. It doesn't have to be a director. It can be, I'm neither of those. It can be whoever you feel in the practice understands the processes the best, is good with change, and will really just lead the project.
Yeah, excellent.
Has the support to lead that project, because there's no point in putting a champion in place if the leadership team don't get behind them and back them and support them to do it.
Yeah. So as we get towards the end here, guys, what are the biggest wins that you've seen? And I'll come to each of you on that, in terms of having gone through this process and implemented in this case Karbon. So Johan, you first. Where have you seen the real benefits?
We've been able to evenly distribute our workload better, thanks to the insights of Karbon. Clients that turn around to us and say, we take forever to email them back. We've now got hard fact that turn around to our clients and say, look, our average response time to you is 1 hour, 47 minutes. Your average response time to us is 116 hours, 57 minutes. I like that because I dealt with it yesterday. Like, this client think we're not quick enough on the response. I've got the ammunition now to tell them to shut up. So yeah, and I know which clients are emailing 80 times a month versus the ones that we hear from once or twice a month. So we can take all of that into our value pricing proposition for them in the future reviews.
Yeah.
So just for me, Karbon with just that insight for my team on a day-to-day basis, nothing's really changed. Yeah. They get their tasks, they've got the deadlines, they understand it all. They've probably got better email management now than they did have, thanks to Karbon. Yeah. But the big change for us and the big win was the insight that we've now got into our statistics. Yeah,
perfect. And Tom?
I mean, we're still very much at the beginning of our Karbon phase, so we're probably not as far as Johan is with that kind of stuff. But for us, really, it's the client tasks. Automating all of our small processes were the big quick wins. So like client tasks, being able to send repeating emails requesting just their information rather than having to deal with a tricky mail merge that takes a couple of hours to set up. That's a quick win. Management meetings are quicker. Visibility across the board's quicker.
Yeah.
Not having to send out work plans and update our spreadsheets, which was taking us across the board something like 35 hours per pod. We've managed to save that time once we've implemented the Karbon. So it's those really short, quick wins when you initially spend the time to set something like Karbon up.
Yeah, so that's a really good lead into a question that we've just had come in. I'm going to direct to Rowan. So Tom said, how would you suggest we correct implementation if we haven't done it well? Feel the software is right, but although using it for a couple of years, feel like we haven't implemented it well. So have lots of potential rather than actual results from it. And the question is, like, a relaunch day with a bit more prep and doing it right, or is there another way to do it? And this is a Karbon implementation, Rowan. So that's a good question for you.
So I would 100% discuss that with us, and then we can set a plan of how you can re-implement and get the setup the way that you want it. And we can also support you on that. So I'm a senior services manager here, so I look after implementations for this region. So absolutely get in touch with us, and we will help you to get that set up the way that you need it to be. And that will include things like cleaning up data, cleaning up work items, as well as training on how to set up the work templates better, and also train your staff. So we cover every aspect of the implementation as part of our support service.
Thanks for that, Rowan. So just as we wrap up, a couple of bits here. So we asked the guys there what their biggest wins were. Rowan, do you want to just take this through these kind of headlines here from a survey that you guys have done recently?
Yeah, absolutely. So these are from our recent customer survey. So this is for 2022. We asked customers various questions around, how long do you save in time? Like, what's the productivity increase that you've seen? And these are some of the key metrics. So one that Tom mentioned there was in terms of like client tasks, how much hours do we save chasing clients? And you can see there we've got, on average, the respondents said that 3.3 hours was saved per week chasing clients. So if you extrapolate that out across the business, that's a big saving, and you've probably already covered the cost of implementing if you're making those savings. So on the whole, it was 16.5 hours saved each week. So big time savings. And this is helping to justify that investment. If you've got those metrics when you start, or an idea of those, that provides a nice benchmark for you as well. So I'd think about probably doing some kind of analysis of that at the start if you can, and then you can measure that again at the end.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Rowan. So just a few key takeaways. We like to finish these sessions kind of highlighting some of the key points that we hope have come across through the session. So if you're thinking about implementing your practice management software, have a clear vision, communicate it effectively throughout the business to make sure everyone understands why you're doing it. What are the drivers for it? It's not technology for technology's sake. It's technology to enhance what you deliver to your clients. If you're going to make this work, you have to dedicate the resources. So Tom talked about what happened with his charge out utilization and so on. You've got to accept that people are going to have to stop the day job to focus on this to get it right, but it will pay off in the long run. Make sure you run plenty of internal training, get feedback sessions, kind of linked to the last point here in terms of you've got to carry the team with you right the way through the process. You've got to keep them engaged, but that doesn't stop when you've implemented. It's like carry on, get the team feedback, identify ways to improve the way that you're using the technology. Make sure you keep up to date with updates. The challenge that we have now with it's a nice challenge to have with cloud software is that updates get issued weekly. Whereas in the good old days of desktop software, you might have 2 upgrades a year, but we've got updates happening on a kind of 2-3 weekly basis here in the technology that we're using now. So we have to make sure we stay up to date with the products, and finally get support where it's available. So whether that's with the implementers, whether it's implementation partners, whether it's people like us at App Advisory Plus, but use support to help you do this stuff as efficiently and effectively as you possibly can. So that brings us nicely to the end of the session. So thank you for staying with us. I'm only 3 minutes past where I said would be. Huge thanks firstly to Rowan and to Johan and Tom for joining us and sharing their personal experiences of this topic. Hope it's been useful. As I say, we will be circulating the recording. So if you want to watch anything back, if you want to get in touch with Rowan, what's the best way for people to get hold of you, Rowan?
You can find me on LinkedIn or message me at rowan@karbonhq.com if you've got any questions.
Excellent. So guys, thanks again for joining us today. Hope you've enjoyed the session. Everyone that's taken the time out to join and listen in, hope it's been useful. Thanks very much indeed, and we will hopefully see many of you on our App of the Month webinar next month. So have a good day. Thanks so much, everyone. Take care.